this is today's agenda. I hope we can see the screen.
Yes, we can. We can see your screen.
Okay, great. So I will run through my profile briefly, and then we go to an introduction section where we set the context about the scramble for Africa, and then some general considerations when starting or investing in a business in Africa, specifically for SMEs. And then I'll take some of the questions that were sent earlier, and if we have any other questions, I would address them. While preparing for this session, I understood we had people from various levels of needs in terms of what they are looking for. So what I've tried to do is to make this presentation suitable for the various spectrum of people that we might have joining this session. Of course, for people who want something more basic, we can engage beyond today. For people who want something more sophisticated and rigorous, we can also engage beyond this. But I've tried to find a balance to accommodate everyone. Right. So very briefly about me. My background is in electrical and electronics engineering, where I studied that in Covenant University, and I humorously like to tell people I finished with a first class lower. And I always get questions, what does that even mean? It's just a fanciful way of saying I finished with 2-1, a very strong 2-1. That's my own way of repackaging myself. I finished with a 4.47 in a very competitive class of what I like to regard as geniuses in the electrical engineering of my set. But beyond that, I've moved on to work with KPMG after school. I worked in KPMG as a management consultant for a number of years. I think about 3 years thereabout. Consulted for around 12 clients across various sectors: banking, insurance, oil and gas, government, SMEs as well. Currently, I head the strategy and corporate planning team in FBN Insurance. FBN Insurance is the most profitable life insurance company in Nigeria today. The company is just 9 years old, but currently stands as the most profitable life insurance company. We're getting some background noise. I don't know if you are someone in transit or something. You could mute your microphone so that it doesn't give noise and feedback. Thank you. So I finished with an MBA course recently from Lagos Business School. I finished among the top in the class, which got me inducted into the Beta Gamma Sigma. I also am a part of the GLG Council member. I consult for Fortune 1000 companies on that platform. Also Kleos Africa consultant, and I sit on the board of 2 companies. One is a foundation and the other is a commercial entity. I also love reading. So let's jump right into it. I think we have about 40 minutes left. So a quick introduction. There's a scramble for Africa. It's continued to build over the years. In recent times, we've seen many companies from different countries venture into Africa. Prior to now, what has been known is that Africa was regarded as a risk, a big risk. So companies typically would stay away. But in recent decades and also in recent years, we've seen that lots of companies are, coming to Africa. It's quite ironic that we find that many Africans, specifically many Nigerians, are fleeing the country, fleeing the continent to go to other countries for greener pastures. But we find that companies are also running in the other direction, trying to get a share, a slice of the pie. And it's really not for charity. These companies are coming to Africa because they see an opportunity. A case study here is what we find in Ghana. Two Turkish companies are known to have played very strategic roles in the power sector and also in building a very beautiful terminal at the country international airport. I was there just a few days ago and I saw the Ghanaian airport. Really looks beautiful, way beautiful than what we have in Nigeria. And standard, it's just standard, a standard airport. And you find that it's foreign companies that are doing things like this. A Philippine utility company by the name of Maraclo Consortium is also known to have taken over a significant distribution, an electric company in Ghana. And also Brazilian companies are also playing roles in Ghana. What you are beginning to see here really, and this cuts across, we're just using Ghana as a case study. We can't go through all the countries in Africa, of course, but Ghana is a case study. You also find that China is coming into Africa and many other, Russia as well. Recently, Nigeria engaged Russia to assist with the Ajaokuta steel plant to help resuscitate that steel plant. And what used to happen before was the Western powers and the colonial masters were primarily the players in Africa, but now you see even countries that are not regarded as world powers even playing a role increasingly in Africa. So there's an appetite to play in Africa more and more for companies. So why is this so? Like I mentioned, of course, it's not for charitable reasons. It's because they see opportunities. One of the areas where these companies are beginning to see the opportunities from the population standpoint. Now, the population of a country, a continent, or a society, a city is one of the cardinal metrics that organizations use to evaluate the size of the opportunities that exist. It's not the only metric, it's not the only condition you check, but very quickly, when you see a continent with 1.2 billion people and projected to be as high as 1.7 billion in 2030, you clearly realize that this is a sizable market. And when you combine that with the fact that opportunities, other markets are maturing, and this market is still a developing market, then you begin to see the size of the opportunities companies are looking for. If we take that further, you'd find that 6 of the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world as of 2018 are from Africa. Ghana tops that chart. So you see that it's, again, the opportunities that companies see that brings them to Africa. Ghana, Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire, Djibouti are some of the companies you can see on that list. 5 of the top 10 companies, or 5 of the companies that have made the most improvements in terms of ease of doing business are also from Africa. For just a quick explanation, the ease of doing business is a way of evaluating how easy it is to do business in a country. And of course, many African countries are regarded as tough environments for doing business when they evaluate things like infrastructure, rule of law, your legal system. Many of those things need to be in place for business to be run seamlessly. And the improvements that is being seen on this index, many of the African countries are beginning to move in the positive direction, which is also attracting players into the market. And I think maybe the biggest one for me is the fact that developed markets are becoming saturated. And when companies look for the next growth frontiers, it becomes very clear that Africa is that next growth frontier. Even knowing the fact that infrastructure deficiencies are still high, fully aware that governments influence policies in very significant ways and that can impact business. The risk of coming to Africa is clearly high, but companies are coming notwithstanding because if you're looking for a market where you get 10, 15, 20%, 30% year-on-year growth, you probably not find it in most developed markets. So as you can see, when markets begin to mature, companies begin to look elsewhere for opportunities. That's just to set the context that there is a scramble for Africa. And the reason is not far-fetched because there are opportunities that are obvious to foreign players. The strange, and I think the message really for those of us who are already in Africa is to look closer and to explore and exploit these opportunities without waiting for someone from another country or continent to come take the opportunities off our hands. So some of the considerations when starting business in Africa or investing in business in Africa, some of the things I wanted to discuss going forward. And I think I'll just jump right into it. Number one is you consider sectors with unmet needs. Consider sectors with unmet needs. There are a lot of sectors in Africa that are underdeveloped, where there are huge needs, and they are yet to be untapped. I would share an example very quickly. I work with FBN Insurance, and insurance in Nigeria, life insurance specifically in Nigeria, is underdeveloped. The penetration of life insurance in Nigeria is less than 1%. Many Nigerians are not interested even in buying insurance. So when we came into the market 9 years ago, one of the things we did was to say, yes, people are not interested in buying insurance in Nigeria. Also, the data suggests there's a large population out there that we expect should be able to purchase insurance. So the question is, how do we crack the retail market? Many of the existing companies in the insurance business, as at the time, had neglected the retail space and focused more on the more predictable corporate insurance landscape. But what we did was to, deploy innovative ways, deploy more innovative products to capture the same market, because there were needs to be met. There were large numbers of people who hadn't bought insurance even for once in their entire life. And exactly what we did was to explore that space. So what you find in Africa, in Nigeria, in many of these African countries is that there are many sectors where there are huge needs that are yet to be met. And when you're going into business, I have something at the bottom here that says profit before passion or vice versa. This is an argument I often find people engaging in. Sometimes some people say, go for your passion and your passion will eventually turn a profit. Some people say go for profit-oriented businesses, search for the opportunities and focus on that space before you chase your passion. I think in more developed climes where even when you don't have money in your pocket, the government will sort of take care of you. It's relatively easier to follow your passion until your passion turns to becoming profitable. All right. But in Africa, if the business you're running is to take care of yourself, take care of your family, is going to take care of your sustenance, and also the people you're paying a salary, to pursue passion without turning a profit in short term could often be very tedious on entrepreneurs, especially when there's no government support, there is no social welfare scheme that is going to keep you afloat as a human being. So I often would recommend that you analyze the sector that has huge opportunities where the needs are significantly unmet, and take advantage of those sectors. There's this book I read some time ago, which I recommend strongly. Title is The Blue Ocean Strategy. It's a really good book, which sort of just encourages businessmen, entrepreneurs, companies to create blue oceans rather than focusing on markets that are already heavily competitive, where you focus on a space that sometimes has been neglected, which is what we did in FBN Insurance. We focused on a space that other insurance companies had neglected, and that has made us to become the most profitable life insurance company in Nigeria. So I strongly recommend, when you're considering doing business in Nigeria, doing business in Africa, seek out sectors with unmet needs. Seek out sectors with unmet needs. There's a quote here from the chairman of Pan-African company, Econet Group, I like it, and that's why I've put it here. I just read it out. It says, Africa is a continent with extraordinary challenges, and it's a cop-out just to wait for government to deal with them. If you see a problem, then think about how you can solve a piece of it. There are many problems that confronts African businesses. Infrastructure is bad, and you can go on and on. But those same problems should be, for us, the source of opportunities. And I think it's clearly what the foreign players are doing, what we consider as problems and complain about and wait for government to solve. We find that for decades, government seems not to come around to solve it. So if progress will be made, we as entrepreneurs would have to take the bold step to tackle some of this problem, which is what companies like Dangote does. There are challenges that confront his business and many other businesses, but he's built a model that sort of rides on those challenges. So you find his company having their own on-site power generator, which is common in Africa, where there's no power. Companies generally have to power their own businesses. But I like a bit where he's also very shrewd in business, in engaging government proactively, irrespective of the government that is in power in Nigeria, irrespective of the party, whether it is PDP or APC. Dangote will engage the government proactively to get ahead of any decisions or regulations that will impact his business. I remember my dad many decades ago used to run a poultry business, a relatively successful poultry business. But interestingly, the government changed the policy, and his poultry business collapsed because of that single policy. I think the government at the day lifted the ban on importation of poultry. At the time he was running the business, it was allowed, there was a ban on importation of poultry. But when government lifted that ban, imported poultry, imported produce were way cheaper than his, so his business collapsed. One of the things we see with Dangote is which every business in Africa, any serious business in Africa, must be able to do, is to be proactive in engaging your regulator. You can never assume that a regulator will make policies that will be in the best interest of the industry, not to talk of your own business. So there must be a proactive engagement and interface with regulators. And we also see in his business that as an internal manufacturing academy, what that means is just a training program that bridges the gap between what people, graduates, know and what they don't know, essentially. So I'm still speaking on unmet needs. What we see from Dangote's experience, or we see from Equinet's experience, is the fact that instead of complaining that government hasn't done X, Y, or Z, these companies have taken the bull by the horn, and they've decided to solve some of the problems. Someone once told me, I can't verify, I haven't independently verified it, that even in the Dangote company, they have their own tarmac for landing their planes in Obajano. There's a place where they have some of their factories where they literally had to build their own tarmac to land their own planes so that they can fly in and fly out at their own convenience. So one of the things African businessmen like these have realized is that if you wait for government to fix everything for you, you would wait forever. But if you identify a need, usually an unmet need, and devise ways of overcoming the hurdles along the way, you would be able to make progress and make decent revenue. So an example of an unmet need is also in the power sector. And power generation, transmission, and distribution remains a failure in many African countries to date. But the opportunity still exists. I recall when I was in university, when we were exploring the possibility of solar power on a retail scale in Nigeria. I remember the price at that time as an electrical engineering student, the price to purchase even a small panel was very high at the time. So it wasn't commercially viable to sell or to engage in such a business. But my understanding is that technology has advanced and there are way more cheaper solar panels today. There is a huge need for power in Africa. The government hasn't fixed this problem. The government doesn't seem to be getting a hang of fixing the problems. That creates unmet needs and opportunities for businesses to fill in such a void. I know of companies that are investing heavily right now in solar panels. They are distributors, major distributors of companies bringing solar panels from China and from Asia and redistributing in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, because these opportunities remain unsolved. So this is just an example of how when you're doing business in Africa, when you're doing business in Nigeria, I use Nigeria because it's a large, it's a decent use case. 190 million population. It's often regarded as a reflection of what Africa is. So if you're going to do business in Africa, you must be able to identify the unmet needs. It's not enough for you to go and play in a sector that is already crowded. It's tough for any telecommunications company to come into Nigeria now and give MTN, Glo, and Airtel a run for their money. It will be very challenging, to be very tough. But at the time where MTN came into Nigeria, the mobile technology solution was an unmet need. There was the need for it, the technology was available, and they solved a problem, even considering the challenges that they still face running that business. So identify an unmet need in the country. That's my primary message there. Don't place your passion. Your passion is important. I'm not saying your passion is not important. In fact, when you make a profit, you can fund your passion. That's the way I see it. But if you are going into business to thrive in that business, to make a living from that business, to pay bills from that business, find an opportunity where you can shine, meet that need, make a profit from it. All right, I move on to the other consideration. Consider the most resilient sectors. Yeah, so in deciding what sector do I play, in deciding what space do I pitch my tent, where do I set up a business? There are various sectors you could go into. There's agriculture, manufacturing, many different sectors, oil and gas, depending on wherever you want to play. Consider the most resilient sectors. Now, what do I mean by most resilient sectors? Simply, that means sectors that are the last to get into trouble and the first to get out of trouble. I would explain. A few years ago, I think 2015, Nigeria got into a big recession, the worst, I think, in its history. But so you would look at that and say there's negative growth quarter on quarter, I think for 3 quarters or so, and it continues in that manner. So as a nation, there is recession. But when you break the GDP of the nation into various sectors, there are some sectors that even in recession, we're still growing. Even though other sectors were affected and impacted because of the recession. Those sectors that were still growing, or those sectors that were regarded as the last to get into a decline, they're often described as the more resilient sectors. Now in Africa, or maybe I should just use Nigeria as an example. Nigeria, when the oil price declines or moves in a negative direction, moves in a direction that is not palatable for the country, what often happens is that many other sectors are impacted. Many other sectors feel the effect of the oil price, the crude oil price. But there are some sectors that remain resilient even when those things are happening. It is wise for one to conduct research, analyze and understand what are the sectors so that when I invest in Africa, one of the ways of hedging my risk is playing in a space where I know that even when some variables become negative, when government makes some rash policies, if the country goes into a recession, these sectors have been known to be resilient. I have a separate document on that, on an analysis that we did with some of our consultants, which I'm not sure this platform would be the best. If we go into that, it might take a lot of time, but there are a list of sectors that are ranked in terms of which is the most resilient, which is not. Maybe if we finish this on time, I can come back to that and share a slide on that, on the resilient sectors in Nigeria specifically. Right. Number 3, collaborate with local partners, market experts, consultants, and researchers. Collaborate with local partners, market experts, consultants, and researchers. If you're coming into Nigeria from outside Nigeria, it is very important that you work with people who know and understand the landscape. It's very important. During the research phase, during the project management phase, it's very critical. Sometimes investment decisions go very bad just because of the lack of a local partner. As I go further down the line, I'll share an example of a company I'm very much aware of that failed in this regard, failing to partner with a local partner. But it's very important. And even as a person who is already in Africa, and you're already in a particular country in Africa, and you are investing in an industry that you know very little about. You've analyzed it, you've seen that there is opportunity, there are unmet needs, there's the prospect of capturing a significant share of the market. From your analysis point of view, you may be right, but when it comes to execution, when it comes to implementation, a local partner could save you a lot of headache, a lot of mistakes. It could save you prevent you from wasting money. I came across this I think it's hilarious, so I decided to share this picture. It says knowledge is power. There's water 8 kilometers away, and there's H2O 500 meters away. Of course, 500 meters is shorter, but H2O, this guy doesn't know what H2O really means. So sometimes, as humorous as this might look, H2O, of course, is just for any participant who doesn't know what that means. H2O means water. It's the same thing as water, but I think that's in chemistry. H2O means water. Sometimes this is how businesses make decisions. You make decisions based on what you know, whereas there's more information that could help make a more accurate decision. A local partner, a consultant, a researcher, an expert in that field could guide you, could make a world of difference. I remember when I first joined FBN Insurance, one of the first tasks I was saddled with coming in as a consultant was to validate the decision the company had made to focus on retail life insurance, because there was the internal tussle amongst management. Some said, let's do corporate. Some said, let's do retail. At some point, there was a decision, grudgingly, that we would do retail. But I came in, joined the team as head of strategy. My first task was to take a look at that decision-making process again and revalidate for us with data to confirm that we have made the right choice. And of course, when I went through the data, I went through the analysis process, sizing the market, where are the competitors focused, and all of that. Where's the unmet needs? Where's the blue ocean? It was very clear that the opportunity was in retail space. But many times organizations go into businesses with gut feel, with passion, go into business with feelings of, oh, this is what I think works, this is what I have heard someone say works, but many times it lands in failure. So that's why the failure rate of businesses are very high. And that can be prevented with partnerships, collaborations, engaging consultants and researchers. And this is one form of data that came from research, just to emphasize how useful this could be. We were trying to evaluate the proportion of spending of people in Lagos and in Rivers State. We were working with a consultant on this. And of course, if you are going into a business that is retail oriented, you're going to be selling things to people. It would be good for you to know how much of what they earn currently and how much of that they spend on various needs that they would have. Ideally, this kind of information, one would have expected if you check on Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, you would find it, or various government agencies, you should find this kind of information. Fortunately, you won't find this information on those platforms. But this is useful information for you going into some markets in Nigeria, you're going into Kaduna, and you don't have an understanding of what people spend, for example, on restaurants and hotels. So you might have a grand idea of going into a certain market, a certain subset of a country, and you realize that that market is not suited for the kind of business you're going in there for. So this kind of analysis can guide you in your decision making, for example. So for looking at this, for example, what we see here is that in River State, people spend more on food and non-alcoholic beverages than in Lagos. This data is as at 2018. It means that in River State, people spend 32% of their 32% of their spending is on food and non-alcoholic beverages, while in Lagos it's about 23.8%, and it goes on like so. It's this kind of information, you get it usually from primary research that you conduct. You engage somebody to do this for you, or you could even go ahead and do it yourself. You won't find this kind of information on Google. Now, this is the kind of information I need for my retail business. You might not need this kind of information, but the point of sharing this slide is to let you know that there are some levels of granularity that you require before you make some strategic decision. There was a quote I came across some years ago. It says, without strategy, execution is aimless. And without execution, strategy is useless. Without strategy, execution is aimless. Without execution, strategy is useless. So the first bit of that quote says, without strategy, execution is aimless. So, and a cardinal part of strategy is research, collaborating with researchers, consultants, to scope the market for you. I've spent the last 3 months working with some consultants planning for the next 3 years. And that has been a rigorous process of back and forth, checking the data, analyzing the data, debating, arguing, and that has nothing to do with this year. It's just planning for the next 3 years. What is 2020 to 2022 going to look like? And how do I position myself in the markets to take advantage of the opportunities that will show up? Spent the last 3 months doing that. Also spent the last couple of months, 2 months, working with another consultant doing a market research. So while I was working with consultant A, working with consultant B, all this work were going on at the same time, all aimed at planning towards 2020 to 2022. So businesses that must run in a sophisticated manner, in a serious manner, must embrace collaborating with researchers and consultants. Okay. And maybe I should just mention that research is not always expensive. It doesn't always have to be expensive. I remember there was a year I had very little research budget, and I wasn't going to get any research budget approved for that year. Very minimal research budget. So what I decided to do was to recruit interns. I recruited about 2 interns and there was one who was an MBA student. I recruited him to work with us. He was running his MBA program, and part of his MBA program was to work in an organization. So I recruited him, paid him just some money, decent amount of money, two of them, and they worked with us. And part of the things we did was to guide them to help us conduct some primary market research. We developed the questions, we sent them into the market, into the streets, and sent out surveys so that we could gather information that would guide decision making. All right. So I'm not saying that everybody must hire a KPMG or everybody must hire a PwC, a McKinsey. You are a startup business in Nigeria and you can't afford that. Maybe you don't even have a sufficient funding to start the business, to buy your key assets, not to talk about research. So you could explore creative means of doing these things. There are people who are with some level of guidance that you can engage at relatively low costs. Now, let me round this point up with an illustration of my industry, having insurance in the life insurance industry. We have a collaboration with Sanlam. Sanlam is a South African company, one of the biggest, I think, number one or number two insurance company in South Africa, really big. They have investments in India, investments in several African countries. But in starting the business, First Bank, which is the oldest bank in Nigeria, over 125 years old. Sanlam is over 100 years old. In starting the business in Nigeria, First Bank and Sanlam decided to partner. Of course, First Bank, strong in banking, but little experience in insurance. Sanlam, strong in insurance, but little understanding of the Nigerian dynamics and peculiarities of the markets in Nigeria. So to make a success of FBN Insurance, a collaboration was established between these two companies, which has accelerated the progress of the insurance company to the point where it is number one from a profit perspective, number three from a market share perspective. That is not a coincidence. So when you have the FBN brand, FBN has lots of branches in Nigeria. You have the Sanlam. Sanlam has the deep technical capabilities in insurance, over 100 years of life insurance expertise. Those combinations can come together. So sometimes collaboration helps extensively to shorten your route to success. If you always think you have to do everything yourself from ground up, then you might achieve it, but it might take you a longer time. But what has happened in this kind of collaboration is FBN has 65%, Sanlam has 35%. Both parties are getting returns on their investments. In terms of ROE as well, return on equity, FBN Insurance is also number one in the life insurance industry. Now, I have here under Old Mutual, also a South African company. Now, mind you, South Africa is an outlier in Africa because it is often, many of its industries behave in a manner similar to many mature markets across the world. So Old Mutual, also a big insurance company in South Africa, invested in Nigeria, bought Oceanic Insurance, but instead of collaborating, what Old Mutual did was to literally clear out what existed before and bring its specialist team, experts, and running Old Mutual in Nigeria the way with policies and the mindset of the Old Mutual South African way. All right, it's good to want to maintain certain standards. It's good, it's great. But there are some local nuances that is just necessary for businesses to have. And long story short, they've been in Nigeria for 5, 6, or 7 years now. And the last time I checked, I used to track their numbers aggressively before because I used to regard them as a competitor, but these days we don't regard them as a strong player in the market, if not been able to turn a profit in the time they've been in the market. All right, so those are some of the considerations. Again, because it's a 45-minute webinar, I cannot go through every single thing I would have loved to say. So there were some questions we received. I'll just go through them very quickly. How to secure funding for SMEs in Africa. There are various foundations that provide funding. Now, as a startup business, you can secure funding through loans, obviously, through equity, through borrowings, through family. But of course, going to the bank in a country like Nigeria, the interest rate is very high, 20% and above. That is even if they get to give it to you. All right, so that puts you on a back foot from day one. So I recommend going to foundations such as Tony Elumelu Foundation. I think they give $5,000 to 1,000 entrepreneurs every year. It's good for any interested entrepreneur to begin to check when they will start their program in 2020. And there are several other organizations like Tony Elumelu. I think the smart thing for any businessman or woman looking for funding in 2020 is to clearly search, call these companies, contact them if you must. When are you running your, funding program or grants program in 2020? Find out and then plan towards it, because they would require you to do a number of things, like put together a business plan, proposal, or things of that nature. You can get some guidance in that regard. I even know of a lady who helps people in the application process. I am available to help in this regard, but that depends on, I may be available, not that I'm available, I may be available to help in this regard, but depends on the timing of the year. There's also Growfin. This is a lot more sophisticated, available in 14 countries in Africa and the Middle East. They give higher amounts between $100,000 to $1.5 million for small and growing businesses, all right? But you must be showing signs of scalability and sustainability. They want to see some serious level of sophistication in what you are doing. They don't expect to just see basic level micro businesses. They want you to be doing something really sophisticated. They fund businesses within these age ranges, 1 to 3, 3 to 6, or more than 6 years old. You can check their websites for the criteria for that. The Bank of Industry has a graduate entrepreneurship fund as well, 2 million naira for NYC. That's for Nigeria. They also have what they call a YES program. It's also a funding scheme at 9%. You can check their websites for more details. Lagos State also has a 5% interest loan for residents of the state. I think the maximum is 5 million naira. Yes, I jump to the next question. What are the key factors unique to African businesses that one should look at when evaluating whether an already existing business in Africa is worthy of investment? A few things I've noted here. Audited financial statements. Find, the business should provide an audited financials for you to check. Is the company profitable? And is the profit coming from its core operations? Or is the profit just from accounting, for lack of a better description, accounting magic? Are they just making investment income from, putting money in treasury bills or something? Because treasury bills rates are relatively high in Nigeria. You don't want to invest in the business and all they are doing with your money is to put the money you give them in treasury bills. You could very well have done that yourself, all right? So you need to really check the numbers very well. Is the business scalable? That's also another very important question. Can this business grow beyond what it is today? Is the business completely dependent on the sole proprietor or the CEO? If the CEO is not there, can the business continue? If there's more demand, will the business collapse, or will the business be able to rise up to take on more demand? These are things you need to check. Is there corporate governance, and is the board is the management accountable to the board? Are the board members just family members? So it's not wrong to have family members on the board, but sometimes in Africa it is a pointer to the fact that even though the business appears to have a board, Decisions will be taken in a very informal manner, and maybe the most domineering person in the family is the person that will have the say. There's a culture of respect in Africa, so even if a wife is the CEO and the husband is the chairman of the board, the uncles are on the board, decisions could very well become could be left to strategic decisions could be left to things around what the most seniors in the family say. So that could also be a sign that you watch out for. What's the constituents and components of the board? Is business ethical? In Africa, in Nigeria specifically, ethics is a big deal. Big deal. If a business is not running ethically, you could very well invest in that business and find that someday the anti-corruption agents pick up the CEO and the accounts of the company is frozen and all. So it's very important. You must find a way of determining that this company takes ethics seriously. And I don't just mean that the owner of the company should be a religious person, should be a pastor, or should be an imam. That's absolutely not what I'm talking about. In fact, sometimes that should be a red flag. But very specifically, there must be a way you evaluate whether this business runs ethically. There are businesses in Nigeria that do so. There are businesses across Africa that run ethically. It's important for you to find out to what level these businesses prioritize ethics. Industry and country dynamics, of course. Investing in the business is not isolated from the industry and the country where it operates. So even if the business is scalable, the business is ethical, there's a board that is composed in a proper manner, there are audited financials, the business is making profit from its core. You also want to understand where is the direction of the industry. Is there growth in the industry? Is the industry going upwards or downwards? Is the industry regulator going to make policies that could result in the collapse of some companies? For example, in my industry, the regulator recently made a policy that all insurance companies should raise capital. All right, so some companies are definitely going to struggle to raise the capital. You're going from about 3 billion to 8 billion in Naira now for life insurance companies. Some companies that are running properly, running ethically, they are profitable, they might not still be able to raise that capital. The result is that they might have to be sold, they might have to merge, some might collapse. So you want to understand what is happening in that industry before you invest, and you want to understand what is going on in that country as a whole. I would like to know any peculiarities of the renewable energy sector. Well, I think I touched on this briefly. There is huge opportunity for power in Africa, especially in the retail space. We've been waiting for governments to fix the power for so long. I think Ghana has gone ahead of many other African countries now, in the sense that it's partnering with companies from Philippines. Here they have 24 hours light. I was there a few days ago and I did not notice any blackouts. But in places like Nigeria, solar power is, if you can sell solar panels at a price where the retail market can afford it, then I think you would make you'd be building a very profitable business. All right. In terms of the windmills to generate power, very little. I've heard very little about that in Nigeria from the government level, from organizational levels. So there's also a market where possibly there could be opportunities for people interested in renewable energy. But summarily, the opportunity is huge for power in Nigeria, and renewable energy could probably be the solution for the retail market. What is the most appropriate parameter to measure growth in business? There are many parameters depending on the industry, of course, so I can't cover every industry here. If you go to banking, if you go to insurance and various industries, it will be different. But one thing I would recommend is this: a balanced scorecard framework would really help in tracking and monitoring the performance of your business. What many businesses focus on most times is the financials, things, revenues and sales and profits. And that is good. That is very important. It's a foundation, but you can't focus on the financials only. You must blend that with non-financial metrics. There's what they call leading and lagging indicators. Let me not get academic with that, but you just understand that your revenues and your profits are things, are outputs that are as a result of what already happened. So the revenue you've made is already past tense in quotes. It's something that's already happened. It's the reflection of what has gone on. So you must begin to track things that are going on that are pointed to the revenue you would make. So things such as customer satisfaction. Are your customers satisfied? Do you survey your customers whether or not they are satisfied with services you are rendering? If you are making high revenues today, but you have dissatisfied customers at the same time, the revenues you have made, you've made them from dissatisfied customers. But the revenues you will make tomorrow, it is likely that those dissatisfied customers will not be a part of that revenue pool, which could result in a reduction in your revenue because you won't get a repeat business from people who have patronized you before. So customer satisfaction is a critical metric that every organization must track. In our organization, we have such a survey we conduct. And in fact, the result of the customer satisfaction survey goes into the appraisal of every employee. So if the company scores, for illustration purposes, 70%, that is, if customers rate us 70% and 70% satisfied, it means that from everybody in the company, from the MD to the most junior staff, will get 70 on their customer satisfaction appraisal score. It cuts across everybody. We are joined together in that regard. All right, so it's very important that you measure customer satisfaction. If your customers are not satisfied, pointing to the fact that your revenues are threatened in the future. You must also have process metrics, turnaround times for key processes. There are various processes in your organization that you must measure. How quickly did I serve the customer and things like that. People metrics are things like your regrettable attrition. If a staff leaves a company and that staff is a very important staff, that is what you call things, that's what you describe as regrettable attrition. Of course, there are some staff that will leave that you will not regret. You know, if they leave, maybe staff who are not even adding value, if they leave, it won't count that as regrettable attrition. So regrettable attritions are the people who are core to the business, important to the business, adding value to the business, but they leave for another company or for whatever reason. That's what you describe as regrettable attrition. So if you are losing your best people, you should also be worried as a business. These are some of the things I think you should track. Return on equity is very important, very critical. Not sure I have time to explain in full details. I don't know if we have any other questions. I think I have rushed most of these things.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Yomi. This has been extremely enlightening. I'm sure everybody on the call has taken one or two very important key takeaways from the chat. So I think we have about 5 minutes to the end of the call. Does anyone have any questions? There are none in the chat right now. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hello.
Hello, Olaide.
Wow. Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, this is Olaide Olawu from Ilorin, Kwara State. Thank you, Mr. Bayomi and Madam Gloria. Glory, I'm very grateful for this second webinar series. Yeah, I think for me, I'm a electrical engineer, and then in the last 3 years, the I have that desire and passion to solve few things in the rural space. Now, but
Hello?
Hello. Hello, Lady. We can't hear you.
Wow.
I think he got cut off.
Lost. Yeah.
Okay, someone else is trying to say something. The Galaxy tab.
Yeah.
Hello, Lady, are you back?
Okay, does anyone else want to have a question?
Yes, please, I have a question. My name is Paul. I want to ask Bayomi.
Go ahead, Paul, go ahead.
Yes, so I would like to ask Bayomi to give us, to let me know some of those sectors that are most resilient in Nigeria at the moment. I know there are so many areas that are so volatile that people go into business and within 2 years they are out of it just because those sectors are not resilient. So I'm sure he must have done some research and have gotten some data that he can share with us. Thank you.
Okay. Let me share my screen. I have a presentation slide that addresses that. Just 1 second. All right. Can you see the screen? Hello?
Not yet.
Wow.
No, we can't see you. I mean, not yet.
Okay, it's coming up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see now?
We're seeing the any questions slide. Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. If you can,
okay,
if you can blow it up. Thank you.
Sector resilience. Can you see it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great.
All right. So we work with economists, research firms, and they conduct this analysis for us. This one specifically, I don't know if you know, this was conducted by Dr. Doyin Salami's company. Dr. Doyin Salami is I can't remember his title now, because he advises the government from an economic point of view. So here you see the most resilient sectors. It's ranked from the most resilient to the least resilient. The oil refining is, in this regard, in this ranking, based on this analysis, is regarded as the least. The top is the forestry. Next by crop production, professional, scientific, technical, and so on and so forth. So they have a detailed process for carrying out this ranking and doing a score. It took a 5-year average, looked at the reaction of various industries to growth or decline in the economy, and this gave rise to this analysis. Now, does it mean that if you're in a sector that is ranked at the lower end, does it mean that you should run away from it? That's probably not what it means, but it is good for you to be armed with this kind of information and for you to then decide on what exactly it is you want to do. All right. And in fact, it could guide you to begin to say, okay, maybe I want to diversify away from this sector to another sector that's more resilient. But that's just the thinking around it. I hope that is useful.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Yomi. Olaide said he was back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you very much. I think in essence, being a registered engineer, I've been doing a kind of a collaborative work in agricultural value chain. But the question is this: I'm looking at, I'm worried because after we've done our need-based assessment and when we start with the feed, we are back, we have our plan, and we have the team that can deliver the project. I want to know, do you know of any platform that we can leverage on to come in form of using our project, our business plan, and our team in form of special purpose vehicle that can do the evaluation of our project and support us for implementation?
Please, if I get you right, I struggle to understand your question. Glory, do you understand the question? Can you help me?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Olade, can you take it again?
Okay, let me take it again. Now,
So
what I'm saying is that
what do you? I understand. I understand what you say you have done. You've done your analysis, your research. You've done a business plan. So what do you need now?
what we need is funds to execute some of these projects.
Okay.
And it's in the agricultural space.
Yes,
Okay.
flow of agricultural space, then renewable energy. Because let me give you the background. Let me quickly do a kind of review.
Now, no, sorry, Mr. Lade, sorry. I have, before you go into that, almost at the end of the call, yes. So, well, something comes, I know a fund that invests in agricultural businesses. So if we can take it offline, and then I will do an introduction to you to that company. Yeah, then you can get the detail offline. But if it's agriculture, I know some people that invest in agriculture, so I will introduce you to them.
No problem. Then we can. I'm
take
okay
it
with
off.
that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. So we'll come to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, Yomi, for sharing your expertise with us. I'm sure everyone took away something. So if you want to reach out to Yomi, Yomi, do you want to take us to the next slide that talks about your Kleos? Yeah. So Yomi is a consultant.
Yeah, you can reach me. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yomi is a consultant on Kleos Africa, which is my consulting platform. So you can reach him. You can book his services through Kleos Africa. Also, if you have needs to enter the creative industry, Kleos Africa, we are consultants to Nigeria's largest bank, which is Access Bank, and we are currently helping people in the creative industry, which includes music, movies, fashion, and technology, to access funds from the central bank. So if you need help with that, do reach out to me either on WhatsApp or on email. In addition, if you want to start a technology startup, and maybe you're a non-technical founder and you want to start a technology business, I can also introduce you to international investors. So essentially, should you require any follow-up on this webinar, do reach out to me through my email or through my WhatsApp, and I will connect you to Yomi or any other consultants that can help. So thank you so much. I can see people saying thank you on the chat. So Yomi, thank you very much. You've touched lives. And yeah, and I look forward to sharing more knowledge with you all at the next webinar. Thank you so much, Yomi. Take care. Everyone, have a good evening. All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.